there is a lot of tension between Netanyahu and the Biden administration. Pretty much Netanyahu's kind of said, F off, old man. That's kind of what he said. The Biden administration has been giving Netanyahu all of these, like, we want a two-state solution. We want you to kind of scale it back with your onslaught of Gaza. And Netanyahu's like, yeah, right, whatever. Here's Netanyahu. The Biden administration has said we want a two-state solution. Antony Blinken has said we want a two-state solution. Netanyahu yesterday gives a press conference and he says, no way, Israel is going to control everything from the river to the sea, which this phrase is supposedly genocidal in nature, right? There's this push that says, oh, if you say river to the sea, Palestine will be free, then you are calling for the genocide of Jews, right? That's been the narrative. And yet here's Netanyahu literally using the same phrase, saying that Israel is going to control everything from the river to the sea. Watch this.
How do you see the U.S.?
For 30 years, I am very consistent, and I'm saying something very simple. This conflict is not on the lack of a state of Palestinian, but the existence of a state, the Jewish state. Every area that we evacuate, we receive terrible terror against that. It happened in South Lebanon, in Gaza, and also Judea and Samaria, which we did it. And therefore, I clarify that in any other arrangement, in the future, the state of Israel have to control on the entire area from the river to the sea. This is what happens when you have sovereignty. This truth I say to our American friends. And I also stopped the attempt to impose us a reality that will jeopardize us. A prime minister in Israel has to be able to say no, even to the best of friends. To say no when you need to and to say yes when you can.
All right, there you go. Israel's going to control everything from the river to the sea. And then you hear what he says about America. We've got to be able to say no to our best friends. Even if they're our best friends, we have to say no to them. So now a lot of people believe that, well, you know, because of October 7th, he's got a point. Israel's got to control everything. And this is because of October 7th. If Hamas would not have done what they did on that day, then there maybe still would have been a possibility of a two-state solution. Let me show you this clip. This is from 8 years ago, way before October 7th ever happened. And here's Netanyahu saying there will be no Palestinian state. Watch.
At Judaism's holiest site, Benjamin Netanyahu gave a prayer of thanks for his political comeback.
I appreciate the decision by Israel's citizens to elect me and my friends against all odds and in the face of powerful forces.
His surprising and crushing victory, the product of an 11th-hour push for right-wing votes, promising there would be no Palestinian state on his watch, and whipping up fear on Facebook with a warning to the base, get out and vote to prevent Arab parties from unseating him.
The right regime is in danger. The Arab voters are coming in huge amounts to the polls.
But those hard-lined statements that saved his job may only deepen his bad blood with the Obama administration, who was privately hoping for his ouster. U.S. officials say they are waiting to see if Netanyahu dials back. If he doesn't, it could be a game changer for both the peace process and U.S.-Israel relations.
Oh, yeah, such a game changer. 8 years ago, and they did nothing. They did nothing. They've continued to just support Netanyahu, continued to give a blank check to Israel, and continued to allow this rhetoric of no two-state solution to happen. And now Israel's being accused of a genocide. And in fact, not only is Israel facing court right now with South Africa at the ICJ, but now Chile and Mexico have also called on Israel to be brought forward in front of the ICC. Now, Israel's not a member of the ICC, but the ICC could still accuse them and convict them of genocide, whether they're a part of them or not. And so now you've got, that was 8 years ago, him saying there will be no two-state solution, there will be no Palestinian state. He has been saying this throughout his entire career. So this is what the Palestinians have been pushing against, and why they've become more radical and more radical and more radical is because they desperately want to be free from this oppression that they're under. And the current government of Israel and the people of Israel who've never been to see what these Palestinian people are living like are in support of this. A lot of them are in support of this. And then you got the United States who just turns a blind eye and just writes a blank check and says, okay, do whatever you want. And here's the U.S. going around the world. Here's Antony Blinken talking about going around the world. He just recently did another tour of all these Arab nations, The reports are he sat down with all of these Arab nations, specifically with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia said, we will continue to normalize. We will normalize relations with Israel if they give the Palestinians a state. There has to be a two-state solution in order for us to normalize with Israel. And Blinken says, I think we can make this happen. And all the other Arab nations said the same thing. Yeah, we'll normalize. We'll just accept that Israel's there and they're not going anywhere, but they have to give the Palestinians a state. They have to stop the suppression. Here's Blinken talking about this, and the pleading and the begging, and this guy really, I think, seriously means all of this. But the Israelis and Netanyahu in particular, they are not listening. Watch what Blinken has to say at the World Economic Forum about this.
You now have something you didn't have before, and that is Arab countries and Muslim countries, even beyond the region, that are prepared to have a relationship with Israel in terms of its integration, its normalization, its security, that they were never prepared to have before, and to do things, to give the necessary assurances, to make the necessary commitments and guarantees, so that Israel is not only integrated, but it can feel secure. But you also have an absolute conviction by those countries, one that we share, that this has to include a pathway to a Palestinian state, because you're not going to get the genuine integration you need. You're not going to get the genuine security you need absent that. And of course, to that end as well, a stronger, reformed Palestinian Authority that can more effectively deliver for its own people has to be part of the equation. But if you take a regional approach, and if you pursue integration with security, with a Palestinian state, all of a sudden, you have a region that's come together in ways that answer the most profound questions that Israel's tried to answer for years, and what has heretofore been its single biggest concern in terms of its security, Iran, is suddenly isolated along with its proxies, and will have to make decisions about what it wants its future to be. So this is actually clear when you look at it and see it. The problem is getting from here to there. And of course, it requires very difficult, challenging decisions. It requires a mindset that's open to that perspective. But the choice is there. And ultimately, this is about choices. What kind of society do we want to live in? What kind of world do we want to live in? What kind of region do we want to live in? We talk a lot as well today about regionalization. Mm-hmm. There's a profound opportunity for regionalization in the Middle East, in the greater Middle East, that we have not had before. The challenge is realizing it.
Does Israel have the prime minister for that opportunity?
Look, these are decisions for Israelis to make. This is a profound decision for the country as a whole to make. What direction does it want to take? Can it seize the opportunity that we believe is there? And they'll have to make those decisions. Anyone who's in office, faced with this is an inflection point. President Biden talks about this often. It's an inflection point geostrategically. I think it's also an inflection point in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And when you get to an inflection point, you have to make hard decisions. Yes.
Right. So there he is saying that they really want a two-state solution, that the Arab nations want it, the United States wants it, but guess who doesn't want it? Netanyahu and the Israelis. So I still am a firm believer that I think Israel has gained the upper hand over American politics. I think that the lobbies have been too strong. This is what happens when you allow your government to be bought off by big money interests. And now the Israelis have a firm grip. And Biden, I think the reason why he's not kind of, swinging the hammer at them and saying, we're going to cut you off from everything is because he knows it won't work, that ultimately there'll be a revolt inside of the AIPAC lobby and other lobby organizations and other powerful people like AIPAC that have the interest of Israel at heart. And I think he knows that it would cause a massive disruption in the political system, that those lobbyists would back different candidates and a lot of people would lose their jobs and they don't want to do that. So I still think that I think the U.S. has lost its way on this. And I think it comes down to big money interests. Big money interests ultimately infect every aspect of our political life, which is why we can't have nice things. And it's also why why we continue to be in these endless wars and fighting battles on behalf of the Israelis. Now we're bombing the Houthis, Yemen, and not working. Nothing's working. We're doing all of these things at the behest of a foreign country, thousands of miles away. Americans are really fed up. But what can we do about our political system? We have to revolt against them in a way, I guess, and vote for other people, demand that we have politicians who are not swayed by big money interests or even if they're not, they're worried that there's going to be a massive lobbying campaign against their candidacy. So even if they're not participating, even if they're not taking the money, they're worried that somebody else will take that money and that money will be used to run against them and unseat them. And that's a serious concern here. So I think we should be really thinking about campaign finance reform would be a good thing. And super PACs, talking about, reforming all of these things, because they're causing us to just remain in endless wars. So it's time to really rethink that.